the presentation.
Awesome. Sounds good. Good morning to all of you. I am really thrilled that Julie invited me to be part of this strategic staff development series. I think it's an amazing idea to collaborate and to learn together. I kind of geek out about learning every day of my life, so I love to be part of groups of people like you who are interested in not only learning yourselves, but to assisting other people to learn. Oops, I think I went the wrong way. All right. Staff learning has the greatest influence on the culture in my organization, so I truly love to share it. And one big distinction is that a learning culture is really different than a sending culture. Sending people to training, sending people to look at a webinar, prescribing content, that is a very different animal than a learning culture. Self-directed achievement has been the key for our library, transforming a sending culture, which is good, to a true learning culture, which is really great. From what I understand, you've already viewed the webinar that introduces and explains SDA, so today we'll just review the basic structure and the belief cycle, which is the core, the how and the why of SDA. And then we're going to have a chance to discuss the questions that you have, which is honestly my favorite part. I could talk about this all day, and I would love to hear your aha moments as well as your questions. SDA is completely moldable, so if you decide to implement SDA, you'll end up designing an SDA structure that's unique to your library and to your people. So many libraries and organizations of all kinds, businesses even, have contacted me over the past 6 years to tell me how they've achieved a learning culture and how they made adjustments to this SDA process that made it work really great for their particular teams. So the next few slides will be familiar. We're looking here at the overall SCA process. The participant determines a 1-hour goal for the week, communicates that goal with their supervisor, completes the goal, or sometimes attempts to complete the goal and finds a barrier that we can help with, and then records it in their personal training log. The supervisor is responsible to listen, make sure that you're listening, you're not driving this meeting, schedule uninterrupted time for the learner every week, and sometimes aid in the scope of a goal if it's too broad or too narrow or too ambiguous. At times, if there's a barrier of some sort, that's your job to get rid of that for that learner, to make sure that they're able to have a clear shot at success. So the process itself is really simple, but it's super powerful. Let's see. I'm not a great slide advancer. All right, so do you remember Steve's story with the ebooks? Steve is super awesome, and he totally wants to do his best all of the time, but he was honestly stuck here. He was underconfident, and he subconsciously strengthened this negative belief about his skills over and over. He isn't the best at teaching tech skill. He isn't able to do that, and that's because he didn't have a skill, and so he was lacking. Now, in all honesty, we do have our Steve that works here, but the Steve I'm talking about is fictional. He's not real. But he is like all of us. We come to work, and we really want to perform well in our jobs. So in some areas, we're really confident. We jump in. We are the first in line. We are the one that wants to help with particular things. And in other areas, we sort of shy away. We are really underconfident. So I would love it if you would all think about just one area where you could improve. Kind of a situation where you could jump in, where you feel underconfident. So when you encounter this thing, does the voice in your head sound like this? I'll find someone else to do it this time because I'm not good enough at it yet. When I am good at it, I'm definitely going to do it, and I'll help everyone with it. But for now, someone else will do it better, so it's really smarter to let someone else do it. This is fooling ourselves. If you tend to avoid situations that involve that skill, it probably means you're not engaged in getting that skill, or you don't feel like you have the time. You're putting it off until that time fairy drops an extra day on your doorstep. But either way, you're perpetuating this negative belief cycle and negative self-talk about you and your abilities. No one is truly bad at anything. I recently watched a great video from a gentleman named Trevor Reagan that talked about learning. And what he said is that there's not a three-point shooting gene. There's not a math gene. You get better at things because you do them more. So in this case, you feel like you can't do that as well as someone else, and the truth is you just haven't done it enough times to become better. Scientifically speaking, you haven't failed enough times to help your brain build a neural connection to this skill. It is honestly, truthfully, actual science with the circuitry of your mind. When you fail at something, analyze it, and try again, it builds new brain circuitry. It builds new myelin around the circuits in your brain. Doing only what you already know maintains existing circuitry, and that's great, but it doesn't build anything new. So I'm assuming we're all directors or in a position, a supervisory position today. So I'll speak a little bit about directorship, but truly as directors, as supervisors, we're all learners. As directors, we know our libraries must be agile and growth-minded. And consequently, we have this added responsibility to really build an agile and growth-minded workforce. It doesn't come ready-made for us. The people behind our libraries are what our libraries are. We have buildings with librarians, and that makes libraries. It's not the other way around. One thing to really understand about this empowered belief cycle and how you can break out of that is that individuals don't conquer negative beliefs. I can say I don't want to have this negative self-talk in my head about a skill that I think that I should be better at, or so-and-so is better at it than me. I don't just conquer that idea, that belief that I have. I replace that belief through meaningful personal experience. We have found that SCA provides a consistent mechanism, and that's very important, a consistent mechanism to replace those beliefs using experiences. Brain research also tells us that consistency is a key to building those strong neural networks. So keep that in mind. That's why we do this every week. Week to week is important. Week to week helps us to create habits. There's a lot of research built around habits, and it would be helpful also if you wanted to dive into that. So SDA gives us dedicated time and accountability to develop and enhance skills. Accountability in our world is positive. We celebrate because somebody achieves, or we celebrate because somebody tried and is going to try again. This dedicated time creates personal experiences that will replace those damaging, limiting beliefs. So 6 years into this program now, we've done this consistently. Here are a few quotes from a recent survey that I sent out. I send out every few years, I send out a kind of a touch base anonymous survey to staff. We've got at any given time anywhere from 15 to 18 staff. So I want their true feedback. I really thrive on feedback. The value, when I look back at the surveys, the value that I see hasn't just been sustained, but it's really grown in the last 6 years. And in fact, every time I send out a survey for feedback, at least one person comes to me and says, we aren't getting rid of SDA, right, because I can say so much more about it if it really helps. I want to keep it. I don't know what I would do without it. And there's this like little bit of panic. And really, I'm looking for feedback. I think that we can always become better. And honestly, this process at some point for us may need to evolve a little bit. I'm not sure. But I'm ready to do it. It's great as a director, as a supervisor, as our supervisors, that we know that this is working. It's a really great tool. We love it. But from these quotes, you can see that our staff knows that it's working for them. Our staff knows that it's working for our community. You know, it makes the library a happier place to work and visit. It's a safe place to explore possibilities. Let's see, change and improvement happens all the time. And these are not huge changes, these are small changes, but it creates this level of empowerment that and engagement that is it's so tangible. I wish I could bottle it up and send it to you. You'll know, you will feel this when you start this, you will feel it. So I'm at the point where I would love to ask for some questions. Is there anything that after watching the webinar it would be helpful for you to know, any aha moments, any concerns or hesitations?
So Jami, looking at the list of participants, the people that are attending the webinar are people that aren't currently in the course, which is okay because we opened the webinar to everybody.
Great.
So I did tell people that we were going to try to record the webinar, so it may be that most of them are working and just couldn't get away. So you may want to spend a little more time about the actual process.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Sounds good. So the process of SCA for us, let's see if I can get down in some of my other notes. So I'm interested. So Megan, Melissa, and Natalie, would you be in a supervisory position where you have direct reports? Are you learners? Yourself, I mean, everybody's a learner. So are there things that this might impact the ability? An hour a week might make a difference in skill building for you. And you can type in the learner, supervisor with direct supervision. Awesome. Learner. Love learners. Love it, love it. All right, so let's go back here to the process overview. So basically what a participant has is they know that they will have a 1 hour that's dedicated, that's uninterrupted to learn something new every single week. That goal is determined by the participant. The reason why we did this, and here I'm gonna freak you out by like flying through some slides. So we looked at our learning culture at the time that we started, or we were getting ready to start this, and this was drawn later, but we had a staff development day that we had just started. We did coaching, we let people have mentoring. There are conferences and workshops, online, webinars and things like that. If somebody requested it, that they were able to do that, we would do our best to find that time. Of course, there's always on-the-job experience. Our city has tuition assistance if somebody's headed back to school. That initial orientation period where you are learning everything, where it's very task-based training, very, very important to get started, but there was this gap. Like we found it wasn't consistent. We found it wasn't personalized. We found that everything that people learned was what I was telling them they needed to know. And while that is all valuable, this whole house is valuable. You can see this big gap in the foundation. It's not consistent. It was only if people requested it. And that just wasn't good enough. We had people in different areas, like some people that were very skilled and very confident in technology areas, and other people who were not. So when I was deciding what to bring in for Staff Development Day, let me know if you've been here, I wasn't sure what to do, and I wasn't sure where to tell the presenter to start, because we had people that really needed ground level, and we had people who were ready for more. So it was kind of that typical classroom situation, like how do you get everybody on the same page? It just did not feel right. So I started looking around outside of library land. I looked inside library land because I thought somebody has already got to have figured this out and has some sort of a training program that's great, that doesn't take a ton of time, that you don't have to, I don't have to tell you what, you know, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an individual learning plan, which are good. But that was not the direction that I wanted to go, and I simply could not find anything. So I decided to start talking to industry leaders about how do they stay on top of things. And one of the places, obviously, that grows so quickly, they have a huge workload, and the skill that they need is just constantly moving. That target is just always moving, is the technology industry. So I talked with someone about how do they manage projects? How do they take care of their learning cultures? And one of the mechanisms that they use, and it's super common, is called Scrum, S-C-R-U-M. And that is a 15-minute meeting. You know what your job is to do, your task is that day or that week, and you have a Scrum meeting most of the time every morning, sometimes once a week, depending on the company, to say, I got this done, and if I didn't, this was in my way, and the supervisor's job is to take that away. So we take that barrier away. So we took a lot of this and applied it to the structure of self-directed achievement. The areas that we ask people to focus on are 21st century skills. So as a learner, you will assign, like the goal that you set, you will determine whether that fell under technology skill, or whether that fell under interpersonal relations or global awareness. And there's a long list of 21st century skills. If you have not had a chance to go through that SDA webinar, I invite you to do it. It's an hour. It's a great SDA hour. But I'm happy to send you these lists as well if you are not able to take that time to view that webinar. It was 5 years ago, no, gosh, 4 years ago. Still seems like a long time. So what we did was, through looking at where these gaps were, we filled that in. Everybody on staff gets self-directed achievement. We talk about people can choose training that is task training for right now. You cannot do tasks during this hour, but you can train or retrain. You can review and refresh. For example, sometimes people will take their hour because they want to review the different types of library cards that we have and how to enter that data, because they feel like they've maybe gotten into some poor habits with that and have some misentered data. It can be as simple as that, to viewing a webinar about a big new idea that they have, or something that they want to accomplish. It can be, you know, we have a database about, I tell everybody to do this, but no one's done it yet. We have a database about fixing your car, right? So all of the manuals for that. I've told people, if you would like to learn how to change your oil while using that database, that is self-directed achievement. Because you are learning the way a learner, the way a community member will use this. exactly the way that they do it. They open it up and they work their way through it. And you're going to be learning how to change your oil, but you're going to be learning what they will encounter along the way with the technology, how to get in, all of that. So it's all very important learning. And if we think about this, I mean, the process of learning is our product. We have to use it. We need to use it. We are much more empathetic. We are much better at receiving people who feel underconfident when they come into the library and they think that, you know, people think we're really smart. I mean, I'm fine with that. They can continue to think that, but they think we're brilliant, that we know everything, and the truth is we all know we don't. But we recognize that feeling of not knowing something and having the courage to find out because we are doing it every single week. I mean, you can see how the spirit of self-directed achievement really spills over into our library, into all of our interactions. There's likely some gaps here that I need to fill about the process. Are there questions at this point just about that process that anyone want to share there in the chat, or unmute yourself and you can talk?
Well, hi, Jamie. This is Julie. Maybe I'll just get it started. And please, people, you have this wonderful opportunity to talk directly to Jamie. So, you know, unmute yourself and ask her some questions. I have a question about the role of the supervisor. So, as you mentioned, this is self-prescribed learning, but I do believe there is a role of the supervisor in I mean, they meet with the staff member like 15 minutes a week, and they talk about what they are planning to learn. And then how does that unfold actually?
So we allot 15 minutes every week. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes the full 15. The supervisor basically listens to what that person's wanting to do. So the guidance that supervisor might give in that meeting is to make sure that their goal is achievable in 1 hour. If it's not, if it's big, they help, you know, they suggest that they break that up over several weeks. For example, there's somebody who wanted to learn Excel, and obviously you're not going to do that in an hour. So that's really their role. The learning is turned over to the learner in this situation. There are other things where we get to impose what somebody learns in staff development day, or we can assign people to go to conferences and workshops. And we do reserve the right, so to speak, as a supervisor to say, in this area, in your performance review, this is an area you're struggling in. I'd like you to spend X number of hours on this in the next 6 months using your SDA time. But it still puts that learner in the driver's seat, and how much more impactful and helpful that is. So those meetings, our supervisors basically say those meetings are great for SDA, but really what it's helped them do, that person, the learner takes care of their goal and kind of takes care of themselves in that way. But they understand what's happening in the lives of each of those people. They know what that person's interested in and can sometimes open up additional opportunities for them. They often get a sense of like the pulse of that person's personal life. Like, how are they doing? Or is there something that you're struggling with? Sometimes as a supervisor, I have really great staff, really overzealous, wonderful people who there have been times I've said, I don't want you to learn anything new. I want you to spend 2 of your SDAs this month on reflection and figure out what you've learned. And for heaven's sakes, pat yourself on the back for what you know. Pat yourself on the back for where you have implemented what you've learned in the library. Write some of that stuff down. They're not writing it down for me. Write it down for you. Share it with me if you want, and hopefully you're really proud of yourself and you want to share it, but it's more of a guidance sort of a situation, more of a coaching kind of a situation. I'm not sure if that answers that question in its entirety. Is there more to that I could explain?
No, I think you did a great job answering the question. Thank you.
We did not anticipate that would be the case. This was an unintended outcome of this program. Time will always be of the essence, and this is something that I know we're right, 60 seconds till we're done, but there was a question about time here, how do we do that? Time is our nemesis. It's always our nemesis. However, when I add up the amount of hours that I pay people in the library every single week, it is 2% of our staff time that is used for development. Development of the product that we propose to serve to our communities. That's a very, very small investment. Oh gosh, and now I can't even think of the book, but I read about this all the time about learning organizations. The standard for learning and staff development in professional organizations is 4%, 3%. Russell Starter is the person who said that, and I think it's a building an effective learning culture or building a learning organization. I don't recall. It came out last year. It's got a blue cover, so us librarians, we can look those things up. Melissa, that's a great comment. Those SDA journals on our SDA log that each individual staff member keeps, they assign a primary and a secondary 21st century skill. And then they have a column in there that if they learn something they didn't expect to learn, or some sort of unintended achievement, and they're I didn't think about that applying to this other thing, which happens a lot. Then they also have a place where they can write notes. Some of our staff, their spreadsheet is huge because they have this huge column of notes about everything that they did or how they felt about it. I totally let that be self-driven. That collection tool is a great way of processing for many people. Other people process in other ways. But yes, that's a great idea. So I'm going to get back to the time. Sorry, I got distracted. So time-wise, when we were looking at this, we were really committed to this idea that in reality, theoretically, this sounded great. In reality, we didn't know if our desk schedule, if our community schedule would be able to bear it. So what we did, rather than introduce it, hope it would work, and then watch it crash and burn, which, let's face it, as directors, as supervisors, we do things, we try things out, and it's okay that happens, but it's kind of crummy when we take our staff on a huge roller coaster. So we decided to let everyone on staff pick a thing that was driving them nuts, that wasn't done, a task that was driving them crazy. And we said, for the next 3 weeks, you have an hour a week to fix that, to do that thing. And we will schedule that time for you. So we played with our schedule while they got a bunch of stuff done before we introduced this. So when we introduced it to the staff, one of the good outcomes there was our staff knew that it was possible. They didn't say, well, how am I going to find the time for this? Well, how did you find the time to get that thing done? Because you made it important. I cannot even explain to you the change in our staff and in our community. Some of the things that have happened with us, I just started making this bullet pointed list. We have one of the outcomes outcomes and outputs. We have had people write grants that had never written grants before, and I didn't have to train them to do that. They did it on their own, and they got these grants. And I got feedback from these granting bodies that were like, wow, they said that was the first grant they ever wrote. Are you kidding? So amazing, amazing things that people do with just an hour a week to invest in themselves. It always turns around to invest in the community and in the library itself. I could just go on about this forever. So, Julie, is there anything more that I could cover here?
No, I think you did a fabulous job, and we have recorded this webinar, and I will also include a link to your previous webinar, which is available on WebJunction. And the great thing about the WebJunction is it also has some other materials that you mentioned.
Yes, there have been follow-up articles. Literally, I have heard from libraries in Paris, France, Canada, all over the U.S., the East Coast, now Alaska, the West Coast, about SDA. And WebJunction was hearing from so many of these folks that they wrote some follow-up articles about people, how libraries have molded SDA. I have even more examples. I love to talk to people about this. I would love to hear from any library who is implementing this that has specific questions or has an idea. Every library and every community is so different, so this is not a set in stone kind of a thing. I can tell you what the tenets of this are and what the outcomes are from the pieces that we've implemented, and then you can do what is right for your system. That's what's the most important. Here is my contact information. So I would love that. I would love to hear from everybody and anybody.
Well, thank you so much, Jami. I really appreciate your generosity of time and sharing this with us. And like I said, we will hopefully be spreading it throughout the state and the libraries will be reaping the benefits of implementing this.
Great.
Process.
Great, and good luck to the new director out there. That's awesome. We've all been there, and I'm still there every day of my life. So.